The file dropped onto her desk just past 9 a.m. It didn't come through official channels. No staffer signed it in. No security clearance tagged it. Just a plain manila envelope, hand-delivered and left in silence. Jasmine Crockett stared at it without touching it. Then finally, carefully, she opened it. The first page looked routine. Immigration audits. Visa approvals. Old case numbers, with redacted names. But halfway through, her eyes locked on a pattern. EB1. EB1. EB-1. One after another. Same category. Same agency approval. All tied to the same 3-year window. All routed through 2 no-defunct modeling firms based out of Midtown Manhattan. One of those firms had a buried parent company. And that company had direct ties to the Trump Organization? Jasmine didn't speak for a full minute. She handed the paper to her chief of staff. He blinked, reread the section twice, then looked up, shaken. This wasn't about a clerical error.
8.
This was a pipeline, and someone years ago had built it to be invisible. Behind closed doors, the team gathered, phones off, curtains drawn. One staffer asked the obvious question, who was? The first. Crockett didn't hesitate. Melania. She said the name like a diagnosis. Cold, clinical, final. Because Melania's immigration story had always felt too clean, too well managed. A supermodel, a Slovenian. Entered on a rare visa meant for Nobel. Winners and cultural icons. And yet barely anyone in the immigration world had questioned it. Until now, the memo made one thing clear. Melania wasn't the only one. She was the template. She was the proof of concept. And once it worked for her, it was scaled. Crockett rose from her chair and paced, slow, focused. This isn't just paperwork, it's a system. Someone built this.
Oh.
Someone protected it. And someone profited, the team. Fell silent, outside the Capitol buzzed like any other Tuesday. Inside that office, history had already shifted, because Jasmine Crockett didn't chase ghosts, she chased power. And she had just found its fingerprints in the ink of an old visa. One of her aides whispered, if this is real, it's not just about her. It's about all of them, Jasmine. Didn't look away from the memo. Then let's start with her. They started with the basics. Melania Nos. Arrived in the U.S. in the mid-90s. Slovenian national. Claimed an EB-1 Extraordinary Ability Visa. A classification usually reserved for Pulitzer winners, Olympians, scientific geniuses, not catalog models and swimsuit spreads. The file didn't lie, but it also didn't explain. Jasmine Crockett pulled everything they had. Travel records, agency listings, old interviews. She even flagged a little-known customs detainment from 1996, quietly, scrubbed from public databases, and then it appeared. Now-defunct modeling firm called Paramount Select, owned on paper by a Belarusian couple, but the rent? Paid through a Delaware shell, and that shell traced directly back to a holding company once owned by a man who later served as a campaign bundler for Donald Trump. Jasmine put her pen down. The agency wasn't just fake. It was a front. Another popped up. Starlight Talent Group. Same pattern. Dozens of Eastern European models, all processed through the same immigration attorney, all magically approved within weeks. No audits, no delays, no denials. The name at the top of one application stood out. Natalia V. processed in the same week as Melania's final adjustment of status, and the sponsor listed. A real estate LLC tied to Trump Tower. Jasmine stared at the printout, her heart beat in her ears. This wasn't isolated. This was engineered. One of her analysts, a young woman named Arya, whispered from the corner of the room. It's like a visa. Mill, but boutique. Selective and protected. Crockett leaned closer. Protected by who? The room stayed silent. They pulled campaign donation records. And there it was again, names from the agencies, from the sponsor firms, from the legal teams. All tucked neatly into FEC reports, tens of thousands in bundled donations.
Oh.
Some through PACs. Some direct to Trump Victory Fund. Jasmine turned to her staff. We're not looking at immigration abuse. We're looking at human trafficking whitewashed through money and prestige. One staffer asked, why didn't anyone catch this before? Another answered before she could, because no one wanted to touch it. Modeling. Foreign women. The First Lady. It was political TNT. Jasmine's jaw. TNSED. Well, ... I just lit the fuse. She looked out the window. The Capitol dome stood steady in the afternoon light. But inside her office, the ground was already shifting. What began as a routine inquiry had turned into a blueprint of corruption. Each signature a quiet transaction, each approval a gateway. Melania was never the story. She was just the beginning. The email was unsigned, no subject line, no attachments, just a single sentence in the body. I know what you found, and I saw it happen. Jasmine Crockett stared at it. Her staff had flagged it an hour ago. The reply came fast. A burner number. One condition. No recording, no tracing, no names. At 11:37 p.m., Jasmine took the call. She was alone in her office. The building was silent, long emptied for the night. The voice on the other end trembled but never cracked. She had worked at the State Department between 2002 and 2007. Visa approvals. Case reviews. Mostly routine. Until she noticed one file that kept getting referenced internally, not for content, but as a precedent. Melania Nos. EB1 visa. The voice paused and said it clearly. That case was used to greenlight others. They called it the NOS rule. Any applicant who fit the aesthetic Eastern European model, socially clean, got flagged NOS adjacent. The system routed them for expedited pre-clearance. Some were sponsored by modeling firms, others by shell companies. One was even backed by a sitting congressman's private consulting firm. They all had one thing in common. They bypassed red flags no ordinary immigrant ever could. Jasmine's fingers tightened around her pen. How many? She asked. The voice exhaled. More than 40, maybe closer to 80. The paper trails were messy on purpose, but they used Melania's file like a golden key. If her visa could work, anyone's could. The silence on the line thickened. Then the voice said, you need to look into one name. Victoria L. Her file was identical. Same sponsor, same lawyer. But she ended up in a private political event in 2015, next to Roger Stone. Jasmine shut her notebook with a snap. She was the test case, a model made into myth, the American dream rewritten as a loophole, and behind it, power brokers, image managers, political handlers who needed compliant faces, quiet pasts. Crockett asked if the whistleblower would go public. The answer came fast. If I do, I disappear. Then the line went dead. Jasmine sat alone. The city buzzed in the distance. The weight of the truth pressed into her chest like lead. Melania's story had never been about her. It was always about what she enabled. A door opened, and they sent others through it, deliberately, quietly, for influence. Crockett looked up at the wall. They called it merit. But it was marketing, and the product was access. It started with one invoice. Folded inside a PAC donor file was a line item labeled Strategic Sponsorship Services. The amount, the recipient. A talent agency with no active models and an address that mapped to a shuttered storefront in Jersey City. Jasmine didn't blink. She knew what she was looking at, and she knew it wasn't unique. Within days, her team traced similar payments: $150,000, $400,000. Even $1.2 million moved quietly between LLCs, donor entities, and fake consulting firms. Each time, the end result was the same: a sponsored visa. They found paperwork that reeked of coordination. Letters of recommendation from people who'd never met the applicants. Corporate job offers for brand ambassadors at companies with no websites. And always expedited processing, often signed off by the same two Department of State officers, one of whom had since retired and now served on a corporate advisory board. Crockett leaned over the map they were building. Each red string tied one name to another. Asterisk, a hedge fund manager here. Lobbyist married to a former ambassador there. In one particularly grim connection, a Miami real estate developer currently under investigation for Russian money laundering. This wasn't chaos. It was structured. A quiet elite immigration market. Her staffer, Malik, read aloud from an email. Chain, vetted candidate available. Eastern European, no political history, fluent in English, sponsorship fee negotiable. The tone was casual, like booking a luxury apartment, but this wasn't real estate. These were people. Passports traded like access cards, citizenship sold, in exchange for silence, obedience, or alignment. The worst part. It wasn't illegal, at least not all of it. The system had been engineered with enough gray space to slip through. Just enough deniability. Just enough distance. During committee prep, one junior staffer stared at the board and muttered under his breath, "This could break the party. If we go public with this." Jasmine didn't flinch. Then let it break. Because what good is a party if it protects predators? What's the point of a flag if it only waves for the rich? Her tone was flat. Her jaw clenched. She didn't say it for drama. She said it because she believed it. Every name they uncovered, every hand in this back channel, Racket had made a choice. To trade influence for access. To use immigration law as a tool of enrichment. To twist the dream of America into a transaction. And Jasmine Crockett wasn't going to pretend it. It didn't exist. She stared down the photos on the board. They thought no one would care. They thought it would stay invisible, but the spotlight had. Found them now, and she wasn't turning it off. Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned in. The seal of the United States gleamed behind Jasmine Crockett like a warning. She didn't open with a speech. She opened with names. A redacted document, declassified that morning, held firmly in her hand as if it might ignite. These are the sponsors. These are the companies. These are the people who made it happen. She read one aloud. Anya Zaleska, model, entered under EB1 criteria. Sponsored by a Shell LLC, registered to Luca Nas, a cousin of Melania Trump. The room went quiet. She read another. David H. Langford, listed as immigration counsel. On 5 suspicious applications. A former Trump attorney, now a private fixer for ultra-wealthy clients. Someone in the back of the room coughed. Camera zoomed in. This isn't speculation, Crockett continued. These aren't rumors. These are filings. Stamped, verified, ignored. She paused, looked straight down the lens, and said it plainly. For years, a hidden market has operated inside our immigration system built by the rich, funded by donors, and protected by silence. Within minutes, social media detonated. The hashtag Visagate exploded across timelines. YouTube livestream comments scrolled like rainfall. What is this? Wait, is Melania involved? Holy hell, she just said it out loud. Twitter was no calmer. Images of the documents flooded feeds. One clip of Crockett saying Luca Nas hit 1.8 million views in an hour. Fox News broke in live. Their anchor's tone was icy. A disgusting political stunt, he said. Smear campaign dressed as oversight, but on MSNBC. Rachel Maddow leaned back in her chair and whispered, "This could be the beginning of the end." She's naming names and she has paper. But Jasmine didn't flinch. She knew the backlash would come. But silence had protected these people for years. It wasn't about Melania. It's not anymore. It was about who followed her, who sponsored them, and who paid to make it all disappear as the press conference ended. Reporters shouted, "Congresswoman, are you saying the former First Lady broke the law?" Crockett didn't answer immediately. She looked directly into the camera one more time. "I'm saying this if her name weren't Melania Trump, her visa would have been denied in 48 hours. Then she stepped away from the podium. Phones rang. Us staffers scrambled. Senators ducked questions in Capitol hallways. Outside, protesters began gathering. Some held signs that read "One rule for them, one rule for us." Inside her office, Jasmine sat in silence, not with fear, but with resolve. She hadn't declared war. She'd simply told the truth, and the world wasn't ready for it. It didn't take long. By sunrise, the Trump war machine had mobilized, emails blasted to every right-wing outlet. Press releases drafted like declarations of war. One headline read, "Crockett's obsession with Melania proves she's threatened by beauty and power." Another ran with a disgraceful attack on an immigrant success story. Melania's personal attorney appeared on Newsmax by noon.com, polished, weaponized. This is the height of irony. An American congresswoman accusing a legal immigrant of fraud. It's anti-immigrant. It's sexist. It's a political smear campaign, he said. The words like a closing argument. But it didn't land how he thought it would, because people were watching the documents, not the spin. Trump himself posted within the hour. Truth Social lit up with bold font fury. Jasmine Crockett is obsessed. Sad. My wife is an American icon. This is what happens when Dems have no agenda. But the internet wasn't buying it wholesale. On Twitter, the backlash split in two. Some called it disgraceful. Others posted side-by-side screenshots Melania's EB1 approval next to a PhD. Applicant from Sudan who'd been denied twice for lack of extraordinary merit. Fire emojis everywhere. A phrase rising fast. Visa for the pretty. Denial. For the brilliant, cider office, Crockett didn't blink. She was reviewing her next move, when her staff warned might escalate things too far. A formal judiciary committee. A subpoena for records, emails, internal approvals. Every single visa application connected to those flagged shell agencies. You're taking this federal, her aide said. Crockett didn't answer right away. She signed the draft, filed it, and looked up. I already did. That afternoon, CNN broke. The news. Crockett issues subpoena in Melania-linked visa investigation. The headline alone sent Capitol Hill into a cold sweat. This wasn't just a press conference anymore. It was a formal probe. It had teeth. It had timelines. And it had her name stamped at the top. Emails poured in. Some from immigrant families thanking her. Others far more vicious. One read, "Watch your back," which her chief of staff intercepted most of the threats. But Crockett didn't flinch, because for every bot swarm and troll account, there were real Americans finally seeing the rot exposed. A clip of her subpoena announcement hit. 6 million views in 2 days, and in every comment section one phrase kept echoing louder. She's not afraid. Not of him, not of her, not of the fire, because the truth doesn't care about backlash, and neither did she. The room was packed. Not just reporters, staffers, aides, even off-duty Capitol Police officers leaned in from the back. Everyone wanted to witness whatever Jasmine Crockett was about to do. She didn't come with bluster, no podium theatrics. Just a black binder, thick, heavy, and eyes that didn't blink. The judiciary hearing was routine on paper, oversight of immigration discretionary protocols. But everyone knew it wasn't routine anymore. Crockett opened her binder. This is a donor contribution from March 2015, $200,000 transferred through a PAC and routed to a shell company. She slid the receipt across the table. 2 weeks later, that same company sponsored an EB1 application. The applicant, 23-year-old model. No awards, no published work. But she was approved fast-tracked through USCIS in under 14 days. Didn't erupt. It's just a thick, frozen silence. The chairman leaned forward. No interruptions. No objections, Crockett continued. This is a tax return filed by the same shell company. 0 declared income. Not somehow. They issued 10 different sponsor letters between 2014 and 2018. She let the numbers speak. Each page was time-stamped. Each signature matched. Each connection tighter than the last. This, she said, is not a broken system. It is a hijacked one. It's weaponized for influence. Silently auctioned off to the wealthy. She flipped another page. Here were internal emails. Redacted names, but dates that lined up. Visas that should have triggered audits. Approvals that bypassed protocols. Agents who waved them through after meetings with donors, even her political opponents didn't interrupt. Across the aisle, a senior Republican senator sat with his hand on his chin. No rebuttal, just a look that said she brought real receipts. Then she closed the binder. This isn't about immigration. It's about access. Who gets it and who pays to skip the line. And finally, one last detail. This is the visa application that started the chain. Melania Noss. Filed in 2000, approved under EB-1 without a single nationally recognized award or publication. She placed it on the table. For a second, the room seemed to forget how to breathe. Phones buzzed. Cameras clicked. An online Visagate is real began. Trending worldwide, not just in English, in Spanish, in Polish, in Russian, in Slovenian, because the illusion had cracked. Immigration had never been fair, but now the cheat code had a name, and Crockett had read it out loud under oath. When the hearing adjourned, no one clapped, but the silence felt louder than applause. Outside, a reporter caught her in the hallway. "Do you think you proved your point?" Crockett didn't stop walking. She just said, "I proved theirs," and walked into history. It started with a silence. That felt ... different. Not the heavy silence of shock, but the kind that forms right before something breaks. Inside the Judiciary Committee's private chambers, the atmosphere had shifted. The air smelled of nerves and stale coffee. Crockett sat alone at the far end of the walnut conference table, binder closed, hands folded. A moderate Republican representative, McClellan of Pennsylvania, adjusted his tie for the 5th time in 2 minutes. His staffer avoided eye contact. Someone whispered, "Near a mic that was supposed to be off, we knew. But we thought it would never come out." Crockett's eyes flicked toward the source. She heard it. So did 3 journalists waiting outside, and now the dam had cracks. Throughout the day, more Republicans began to reposition. Not publicly, not yet. But their body language changed. Their statements grew vaguer. A few ducked press entirely. Even Senator Hammond, known for his loyalty to the Trump circle, skipped his scheduled Fox interview. His staff claimed he had a dental emergency. The message was clear. This scandal was radioactive. Then came the real moment. A closed-door meeting was called. Just Crockett and 3 senior committee members. No aides, no phones. Congressman Delacroix, a Democrat with deep ties to the committee's old guard, didn't sit down. He walked slowly as if every step weighed more than it should. "We want to preserve the institution," he said. "Man, this hearing, if it continues, it could collapse more than you realize." Crockett didn't blink. "You mean expose?" "More than you're comfortable with." He didn't deny it. Then he made the offer. Bury the hearings. Move the documents into private archives. Issue a bipartisan statement about protecting national dignity. And in return, no ethics inquiry, no public smear campaign. Silence, bought clean. Crockett stood. She walked to the window, looked out over the Capitol dome, glowing in the dusk, and let the silence hang long enough to make them uncomfortable. Then she turned. "My silence bought their entry into this country. I won't sell it again just to make powerful men sleep easier." There was no shouting, no fight. Just the sound of chairs scraping quietly as men stood to leave, knowing they'd failed to shut her down outside. When a reporter asked if the committee was united, Crockett gave a dry smile. There's no unity when everyone's pretending not to know each other's secrets. And just like that, Washington realized this wasn't just an immigration scandal. It was a loyalty test. And the committee had already failed. For 2 weeks, Melania and Trump had been silent. Not a tweet, not a press release. Only the quiet tightening of legal teams and vague statements from her spokesperson. But now, America watched. She appeared on primetime, hair immaculate, posture regal, voice carefully measured on a velvet-backed set designed to invoke sympathy, not scandal. The interviewer, handpicked by her team, leaned in gently. "Mrs. Trump, did you know about any misuse of the visa process?" Melania offered a tight, pained smile. "No, I came to this country legally. Everything was by the book. These attacks are very hurtful. I feel targeted. The chyron beneath her face read, Melania and Trump. I am a victim of political hate. But even before the segment ended, fact-checkers had already struck. Crockett's documents released just days earlier laid out a meticulous timeline. One of the most damning pieces, a set of USCIS internal memos showing expedited processing tied to a law firm connected directly to Melania's cousin. The same cousin Melania claimed she hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Within 10 minutes of the interview airing, Twitter was ablaze. This timeline is falling apart in real time. She didn't expect the receipts to already be public. They should have coordinated the lie better. Even neutral journalists seemed stunned by the disconnect. One viral moment came when CNN cut live from the interview back to their legal analyst. He took off his glasses, sighed, and said, "This isn't just an optics crisis. It's evidence of federal fraud broadcast live." Clips of the statement circulated instantly. Hashtags surged. Visagate, Melania lied, federal fraud. On TikTok. Side-by-side comparisons of Crockett's documents and Melania's statements racked up millions of views in hours. Gen Z creators mocked the contradictions with razor-sharp edits and cold facts. Even mainstream anchors couldn't hold back. Rachel Doe opened her show with, "Tonight we witness not a defense, but a collapse." Fox tried to salvage the moment. One panelist called it a brave woman defending her name. Another said, even if some mistakes were made, is this really her fault? But the tone had shifted. The interview meant to reclaim narrative only hardened public suspicion. Because in politics, timing is everything, and Melania spoke 2 chapters too late, as Crockett tweeted just hours later. With a single screenshot of a USCIS approval stamp, you can't rewrite what's already been notarized. And with that, the illusion of innocence shattered. It was supposed to remain sealed. The sponsor list buried deep within a classified USCIS archive had been protected for years, under layers of national security waivers and congressional immunity. Loopholes. But Jasmine Crockett had found a legal crack wide enough to pry it open, and what spilled out? It wasn't just immigration fraud. It was influence trafficking, hidden pipelines. Quiet power. The Judiciary Committee held an emergency closed-door session. Phones were locked, windows covered. Even the stenographer had to surrender their notes mid-session. Crockett sat at the head of the table, shoulders squared, eyes cold. In front of her, a single sheet of names, highlighted in red. "The following individuals," she began, her voice steady, "submitted formal visa sponsorships through a third-party firm registered to a Miami shell company now defunct. The same company tied to Melania Trump's family foundation." The first name she read drew murmurs. The second name, a sitting board member of a federal defense contractor, brought silence. Then, Dr. Henry Wolstein, husband of Senator Marla Wolstein. Someone dropped a pen. A Republican staffer leaned into his boss's ear and whispered urgently. The senator went pale. Crockett continued. "This sponsor list includes active DOJ consultants, 4 members of state election boards, and 3 former immigration judges." One Democrat muttered, "Jesus." A Republican aide, trembling, stood up and left the room only to be seen, moments later vomiting in the hallway, because the implications weren't just political, they were structural. These weren't just visa shortcuts for a few friends. They were backdoor entry passes for foreign nationals signed and sealed by the same hands shaping American law and policy. This wasn't incompetence, Crockett said. This was intent. The list included donors to both parties but Melanians. Link had changed the stakes. Her family's network hadn't just exploited the system they'd built, scaffolding around it. They made the scam legal enough to slip through undetected. At the end of the session, Crockett placed the paper down. "Redacted or not, I'm submitting this to the Subcommittee on Government Oversight." A senior Republican, normally composed, leaned forward. "If that list goes public, it could bring down half the chamber." Crockett didn't flinch. She looked him in the eye and replied, "Then maybe half the chamber needs to fall." That night, the list didn't leak, but rumors did, and by morning, one headline had clawed its way to the top of every screen in America. Visagate scandal involves sitting Senator, DOJ launches internal inquiry. The Department of Justice didn't hold a press conference. They didn't need to. By sunrise, subpoenas were already landing like thunder across Washington. Unmarked vans rolled into agency parking lots. Phones went dead. Staffers ghosted overnight. Visagate had breached containment. An immigration oversight prosecutor, speaking off record, said it plainly. We've never seen a pipeline this organized, or this bipartisan. Jasmine Crockett sat in her office at 8:14 a.m. when her chief of staff burst through the door. They just arrested Barry Klein. She blinked. Who? Melania's immigration consultant. The one who handled her parents' green cards. FBI picked him up on the Capitol steps. Within an hour, Klein's mugshot hit the feeds. By noon, #Visagate had over 7 million mentions across platforms. Reddit threads bloomed. TikTok lawyers explained the fraud in real time. Twitter was a firestorm, and for the first time, Crockett received something else. A direct threat. Handwritten, no return address. Stop this, or we'll stop you. Capitol Police quietly assigned her federal protection. She didn't argue, but she didn't stop either. At 2:36 p.m., Crockett filed a motion requesting DOJ oversight transcripts be shared with the Judiciary Committee. The message was clear. She wasn't just a whistleblower. She was a watchdog. Now, meanwhile, behind marble walls and gold-tinted glass, Melania and Trump's legal team scrambled. Her attorney, Julian Kramer, requested a sealed meeting with federal prosecutors. His offer was bold and panicked. Melania will cooperate, but she wants limited immunity for anything prior to 2017. The DOJ didn't respond. They didn't need to. That same afternoon, an internal DOJ memo leaked. Its title, Visa4 Access Fraud Scheme, Potential High-Level Political Complicity. Names were redacted. But the implication wasn't. A former ethics officer on CNN said it out loud. If even half of this memo is true, this is bigger than Watergate. Back in her office, Crockett stood at her window, watching the sun set over a trembling Capitol dome. She didn't speak, just breathed, slow, measured. A junior aide knocked. You okay? She nodded, then turned, and said what would become the rallying cry of a generation. They spent decades forging entry. I'm not letting them by silence. By nightfall. Protesters lit candles outside the Department of Justice building, not in anger and warning. America wasn't asleep anymore, and the DOJ had just woken up.